Hi, welcome to Midwest Magic Cleaning. My name is Obi Trice, real name, no gimmicks. And this week we are going to clean an actual literal trap house. And if you don't know what a trap house is, well, today you're going to learn, son. This house had so much crazy stuff happen that I'm going to try to remember all of it. From some of the things that we found inside and outside the house to the fact that we saved a dude's life. And I don't mean that metaphorically, like as in, I thank you for cleaning the house. This was literally a lifesaver. No, that we actually saved a dude from dying during this cleanup. I'm going to tell you all those stories. Hang in there. It's a lot of information to get through. So I suppose the first thing that I should bring up is, I guess for those of you who are fortunately sheltered and don't know what a trap house is, this is a trap house. They are usually dilapidated houses. All the windows are covered up, and what goes on inside is a lot of community illegal substance use. They are often filled with people who have nowhere else to go. They have no friends, no family, no community, and their bond is drug use. What makes this one out of the ordinary is that one, it's right across the street from a police station, and two, this was on the side of the house. I'm not saying anything. You do with that information what you will. I'm just showing you. Every window in the house had a blanket nailed to it, and man, they didn't spare any nails. They hammered nails right into the frame of each window, and they sealed that sucker up tight. That's actually pretty common in a trap house because they don't want people seeing in to see what they're actually doing. And oftentimes the kind of drugs they're doing cause paranoid delusions. So they think that people are spying on them. So they oftentimes will cover up all the windows. We are not entering either of the bathrooms because they were a biohazard. They were not using the toilet. They were using buckets. And I did not have any safety gear or biohazard gear with me. So rather than expose my employees to that kind of danger, we just closed the doors and said, you're on your own on this section. So the guy who owned this house went to prison recently, I'm assuming for drugs. And it took them a little bit to get all the stragglers out of the house. But once they did, this left the daughter in this weird spot where she's got to manage what's left over. Like this whole nightmare was just kind of handed to her. And what do you even do with this? So their plan was they're going to go ahead and just clean up the house as best they can, get all the junk out of it, and then board up the windows and sell it as is. Now, fortunately, this is actually in a good part of town. There's a couple of really bad houses there, but overall, it's in a really good location. So even though the house probably won't sell for much, the actual land that it sits on likely will. Whoever buys it will most likely end up buying it for the land and the lot and just bulldoze the house. Before I go too much further, I do want to give some thank yous and some shout outs because we couldn't have done this without the help of several people. The first is Rick the Jerk. If you follow his channel on YouTube, you've seen him do a whole lot of charity type work before. And if you haven't seen him on YouTube, I'm going to link his channel, and feel free to go over there and say hey, tell him Midwest Magic Cleaning sent you, and give him a subscribe because he definitely deserves it. The guy in the overalls goes by the name Muffs, and it's not perverted, it's a long story, it's just a nickname. Get your mind out of the gutter, Mom. We rented the dumpsters off of Jaeger Land Service. I will also include a link to his website and his YouTube channel in the description of this video. And he's really, really a good guy. He cut us a pretty decent deal on these dumpsters. I mean, otherwise it could have cost us $2,000 out of pocket to help people who couldn't help themselves. My employees who helped on this are Kristen. She's my assistant. She's the one with blonde hair. And then there's Allison, who's behind the camera right now, but will make an appearance later on in this video. And I'm really proud of the way everybody handled this situation because it was not easy. Emotionally, physically, this was just exhausting. So I think the biggest question you're going to have is, what are you doing with all this stuff? Did you donate any of it? Did you sell any of it? Did you just trash it all? Everything in this house, except for a few sentimental items, had to be trashed. Remember that they were using some pretty potent drugs in here. Everything was tainted. We used masks the entire time we cleaned. We used gloves the entire time we cleaned. We didn't really want to touch or breathe anything in this house. The entire house was also coated in a very thick layer of what we later found out was fire extinguisher dust. There was a fire that looked like it started in the kitchen at one point. They must have put it out with that and then never cleaned it up. Everything was coated in this stuff. Even if everything wasn't coated in drug fumes, there was nothing of real value in this house at all. Everything of value had been sold and stripped and recycled. That's actually really, really common in a trap house, is that they need money for drugs, and usually most people who live there aren't working, so they will strip down everything they can. They'll recycle aluminum, they'll sell copper. I mean, they even stripped down the stove and took all the aluminum and copper out of it to sell it for drug money. They left one burner alone so they could cook. Otherwise, this house was filled with just a ton of appliances that had been stripped. So you could tell that they had gone to curbside pickups, and if something had copper in it, they would just take it home, strip it out, sell the copper. We found dozens of heaters and old vacuums and just all kinds of stuff that had been stripped out. But even if there were valuable items in this house, we actually couldn't by law donate it because of how toxic everything was. The closest thing we came to anything with value was a very large stack of vinyl, and the daughter wanted us to keep that for her, so we just didn't touch them and left them in the stack. You'll see that later in the video. There was also a large container of Easy Rider magazines that dated back to what looked to me like the 1960s, maybe 1970s, and we ended up having to toss those because mice had gotten into them, chewed them all up, and then it was just filled with mouse urine. Everything was completely toxic. So all that being said, the very first step that we have to do in a house like this is get everything out. We ended up filling 3 20-yard dumpsters, and to be honest, we could have filled more because there was a whole bunch more stuff outside. There are some things I'm not going to show you on this video because it's fairly upsetting, and in fact I'm almost hesitant to even talk about some of it, but I will, just so you're aware of how bad this actually was. For one, they were running a puppy mill. We ended up having to break down one dog cage that was so big it couldn't fit through a door, and Rick actually had to use a grinder to get that taken apart because they had taken wire and twisted up the cage itself to where it couldn't be broken down. There were children in here at one point, and the reason I know that is because one of the bedrooms, if not two, had a bunch of homework from young kids. We also found a couple of bundles of drugs, not much, but there was an open face foil that had meth on top of it. I think Rick found a pipe at one point. I think Muffs found 1 or 2 bundles of just residue on foil. And I will not be showing you the items that we found and the bottles of liquid for ease of use. Let's just pretend we didn't find anything like that at all, and I'm just making that part up. We're all better people for having that not in our heads. This place was absolutely overran with roaches. Now, most of the roaches that I found were dead. I found tens of thousands of roach bodies in the cabinets. The cabinets themselves were so bad that I thought they were painted black, and it was actually a combination of roach bodies, old spilled oil, and roach poop. And once I ran a scouring pad over that and found out that that was not the case, that they weren't painted black, that was a little trippy. We'll get to that part here in a little bit because I do have close-up shots of me doing the cleaning on the insides of at least one of those cabinets. Oh, also, this is the first video I've ever done where I cleaned a ceiling. When we get to that part, it will legit blow your mind. It blew my mind, and I was the one cleaning it. It took 5 people 3 days to get all this junk out of here, and to be fair, it wasn't that it was just slow moving. We couldn't get a hold of the big giant dumpsters that I normally get, so we had to deal with 20-yard dumpsters, and we were filling those so quickly that we would just call it a day once it was full, then call Jaeger and have him deliver one overnight. Then we could fill the next one up the next day. There were a few things in this house that I really wish we could have donated, but because of the drug contamination, we couldn't. One was an oxygen tank. Someone was on oxygen in that house. And even if it didn't have oxygen in it, the tank could have likely been reused. There was also a wheelchair and a walker. But again, that's not something you can really donate without knowing exactly what all it's been through. And unfortunately, I do know what all it's been through. And I'm not sure which is worse, knowing or not knowing. Besides the bathrooms, there were 2 things that we didn't mess with. One was the stove, the other was the refrigerator. Both are going to have to go anyway, and I have a rule that once a house has been abandoned or if it's in a really bad hoarded house, I do not open the refrigerator. And unless it's a life and death sort of thing or it's a health thing, like maybe there's an old person still living there and they have to deal with all the rotten food, I'll clean it at that point. But for the most part, if there's an able-bodied person in the house or the house has been abandoned or vacated, that refrigerator door stays shut. If they were trying to flip this house and they were going to do a bunch of rebuilding and repainting and all that, we would have washed every single wall and I would have done a whole bunch of work on the floors. Unfortunately, the floors are absolutely shot. There's no mopping them. We did sweep them, we did vacuum them, but there was no way that these floors are going to be restored without taking like a ½ inch of material off of them and resanding it. And by that point, you're almost sanding all the way through the wood. So they're going to have to be replaced by whoever buys it if they don't bulldoze it first. One point I wanted to make real quick is that we did not find any needles in this house. If you are out there and trying to help a friend who's in a situation in a house like this, I would recommend that you get professionals to help you. I know what I'm looking for as far as drug paraphernalia, and even though we did find drugs in the house, at least we didn't find needles, and that's one thing that I tell my employees. If you're unsure about a pile of stuff that you're picking up, leave it alone and let me get it. I know how to kind of sift through there to not stab myself. Had we found anything like that, the steps that I would use to dispose of them would be, 1, to put them all into a thick plastic container like an old laundry detergent bottle or a 5-gallon bucket with a lid, something with really thick sides that the needles couldn't poke through. Step 2 would have been to go over to the police station, tell them what I'd found, and sometimes they can dispose of it. Step 3, if they don't dispose of it, I would have taken them to the hospital where they could. And it's the same steps pretty much if drugs are found. You take them, seal them up to where they can't get airborne, take them to the police, let them deal with it. Just, hey, I found this while I was cleaning this house over there. Please let me never see this again, and let them dispose of it for you.
It's a very fancy.
Our biggest concern wasn't necessarily the house. It was the residual traffic that was left over after everybody was booted from the house. So we had at least one guy who was clearly an addict who showed up, said that he had lived there before and that he had a large mirror and wondered if we still had it. And we had to tell him, sorry, man, that's long gone. That was in yesterday's dumpster. He was very, very nice, but it can get a little bit scary whenever you have people who used to live in the house and you don't know if they're going to break in after you're gone or if they're going to be going through a delusional episode and you become the subject of that or the target of that. We did have one guy that was walking by who was having full-blown schizophrenic paranoid delusions, and he was talking to somebody who wasn't there very angrily and very loudly and clearly looking at a person who wasn't there. We just kept our distance. We didn't say anything as he walked through the alleyway, and he just left us alone and went on about his business. But the third encounter was where things got crazy. So at the beginning of this video, I told you that we saved a guy's life. And again, I'm not being metaphorical about it. There was a guy who was walking outside the house down an alleyway. It's like a paved alleyway. And I noticed him looking at one of the houses across the street, and I thought that he was looking at some chickens that were in the yard. I thought he was just like, hey, chickens and underneath a trampoline. That's weird. Just a chicken under a trampoline. Trampoline chicken. Sorry, I can't hold this steady. I had to zoom in quite a bit. Chicken trampoline. So I didn't pay him much attention. I went outside a little bit later and I was talking to Kristen and Allison and Muffs about the chickens, and we're just BSing. And then Muffs was like, what the hell is that? And he's pointing over to the yard. So we kind of dipped our heads around the dumpster because the dumpster was blocking our view. And it's a guy named Billy in the arms out snow angel pose facing upward in a yard. And Muffs thought like I thought. It's in a neighborhood where people are getting drunk a lot, or, you know, they're on drugs, and maybe he just passed out in the yard. So kind of cautiously and nonchalantly even, we started, you know, hollering out for him, hey, you okay, sir? And then he started convulsing and he was seizing. So then Allison ran over and hollered out to Muffs to call 911. I ran in to get my phone in case Muffs didn't have his phone. Anyway, I came back outside and he was on the phone with 911. I ran over to Allison, who was asking me to turn him on his side because he was starting to throw up, or at least dry heaving. He didn't have anything in his stomach to actually throw up, but he had done it enough while he was facing up to clog his airways, so it wasn't all dry heaves. Anyway, I turned him on his side. I'm rubbing his back. We're trying to get him conscious or to answer us or anything. In the meantime, time is passing and his breathing's getting more erratic and he's convulsing. So Allison and Kristen ran across the street to the police station, even though the ambulance was already on its way, because we didn't know if this guy was ODing. So they went across the street and said, hey, can you send somebody? He's literally within eyeshot of you right now. Can you bring Narcan? And the police asked, oh, is it one of those situations? And we're like, or Allison said, I have no idea. This guy's convulsing in the lawn. We assume maybe, but it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So can somebody come over? So the police came across 2 or 3 different officers, and about the time they got there, within a minute or two, the ambulance and fire department showed up. In the middle of all that, while Allison and Kristen were across the street, I was rubbing his back and trying to get him to acknowledge that I was there to see if I could get some sort of consciousness, and then he stopped breathing entirely. And I didn't know what to do because I've never encountered anything like that. So my gut reaction was just to thump him really hard between his shoulder blades and just yell out, hey, breathe, breathe. And right after I did that, he took a deep breath, but he had stopped breathing entirely. And I'm watching because the way that he's laying, I could see the pulse on the lower part of his stomach. Like you could visually see his heart beating there. When he stopped breathing, that stopped pulsing. And that's why I hit him really hard in his back and just with the butt of my hand and yelled, breathe. So when the ambulance and the police and the fire department got there, they actually recognized him on sight and knew his name. His name is Billy. And they said, yeah, actually, he goes through this all the time. He'll just be walking around town and then suddenly sees, and then he goes to the hospital a couple times a week. So they got him all set. They got him in the ambulance. The police and fire department department left, and then the ambulance was still there for several minutes while they were working on him in the back of the ambulance. So we just assumed everything was okay and went on about our day. We wrapped up our stuff, but the girls were really, really worried about him. So the next day, it was just me and Kristen at the place, and I needed her to go to a Walmart trip to get a bunch of bleach and stuff so I could clean the ceiling. While she was gone, Billy stopped by. He specifically came back to that house hoping to catch us, to thank us all, and said that we had saved his life. He said that he had had another episode the day before at the courthouse and his heart had completely stopped and they had to rush him to the ER. And the same thing had happened to him in the yard, and they had told him at the hospital that, yeah, you stopped breathing, your heart stopped again, and the people who were with you basically saved you from dying. So not only was that a huge upside, but we also found out it was not an OD or anything like that. He has heart problems that cause, it's like some blockages in his heart, but he's also got a problem with his brain. Between the two hemispheres of his brain, he has a growth, sort of like a cyst type of growth, and that causes him nonstop seizures. And the only way to take care of it is brain surgery. I was just really happy to see him up and talking. He was super nice, soft-spoken, humble guy. He was thankful. He shook my hand. He just seemed like his eyes were back. And just seeing him be able to perceive the world was crazy to me, because just yesterday he was somewhere else. Like, his eyes were open, but he couldn't see anything while he was going through that episode. I've never been through something like that before. The girls have never been through it before. And it was just really, really bizarre and adrenaline inducing. I've got a lot of stories from a lot of places that I've cleaned, but nothing was as nuts as that. So Billy, if you're watching this, I'm glad you're around. I'm glad you're doing better. Make sure you keep the stress down and relax for a few days, man. Don't be going on any walks in this heat. Oh, but the strangest thing out of all this, there's actually two things that I found really strange. The first is, after he had gone to the hospital and the ambulance had pulled away, we went back in and started cleaning up a porch area and immediately found a book called Help for Billy. I don't know why we found that book at that time, but even if it was a coincidence, it was such a strange and surreal experience to see that book titled that. But the next day, right before Billy had came over to thank us, I looked across the street and there was a group of crows, like, I don't know, 15 of them. They were all right where Billy was laying, just pecking grass and stuff. And I thought it was a bad omen. I'm not a superstitious guy, but I mean, I look over and exactly where that dude was laying the day before, there's 15 crows all in that one big lumped area. So I immediately thought, if signs are a thing, he may have passed away. And then within 5 minutes, that's when he walked around the dumpster and shook my hand, and we talked for a while. All I know is that after all that happened and then those little signs popped up, me, Kristen, and Allison said a lot of phrases that started with the word holy that I can't really repeat on YouTube, but there was a lot of stuff that tripped us out. After 3 days of taking stuff to dumpsters and clearing out the whole house, it was time to clean it. And this was my favorite part of this whole process because it's been a while since I've done a really, really bad house. So the first thing that I did was grab a broom and just start dusting the ceilings, the cobwebs, the ceiling fans, because everything was just covered in dirt and hair. And it was around this time that I realized that that was soot on the ceiling of the kitchen. And that's when all of a sudden all that dust on the floor made sense to us. We were like, it's fire extinguisher dust. That's what it is. Because it was fine grain. It almost looked like somebody had burnt 100,000 sticks of incense over the entire house. Super fine grain. It was all uniform color, so it wasn't just random dirt that had piled up over the years, but it was just on everything. And when we saw that soot on the kitchen ceiling, we were like, okay, everything makes sense now. Let's figure out how to tackle it. Fortunately for us, one of the things they left behind was an old vacuum that wasn't that great, but it did have suction power. And I think somebody had just given up on it because they thought it was broken, when in reality, it was just stuffed with animal hair. So I unclogged it and used that vacuum to suck up all the extra little fine grain fire extinguisher dust. And then I used it on the inside of the cabinets that's where all the roaches were that I was telling you about earlier. Just tens of thousands of bodies. So I sucked up all that stuff off of the cabinets, off the countertops, on the floors where it had all gathered around the cabinets. And I was so glad to have found that vacuum, because if we didn't find one, that meant I had to buy a brand new one from Walmart that was just a cheap, tossable piece of crap, use it, and then throw it away, because there's no way that I was taking a vacuum from this house somewhere else. Because in the process of sucking up all these roach bodies, I was also sucking up live roaches. There wasn't nearly as many of those as there were dead ones, but I mean, damn, son. And that's kind of the hard part of knowing how to clean a mess that's this bad. You have to do it in layers. So you're going to get the big stuff up first, the loose debris, with a vacuum or a broom, which is going to expose the really grimy parts, which were on the cabinets. And you'll see that on the cabinet shelves here in a minute. I'll do a close-up where you can see me cleaning it. But that's layer 2. We got to get all that filth and grime up. Then we can do a third step, which is going to be basically sanitizing the surfaces. Now, I say sanitizing the surfaces, but even after I cleaned it myself, knowing what I just cleaned up, I would have never put food or dishes or even random trash in those things ever again. Those were absolutely disgusting, and there's no way I would have ever used those again, just because it's in my brain now. I know what I saw in there. So I'm using the word sanitize very loosely. I'm making finger quotes as I talk right now. So why am I cleaning all this stuff if they're just going to sell it off and bulldoze it, or somebody's going to strip it to the studs and try to rebuild it or flip it or whatever? I mean, honestly, it's because I was asked to. I know the woman who's the mother of the girl who lived there. She didn't live in this house. I mean, she lived in it before it became a meth haven, but she's an old friend of mine. She asked me for my help. I decided to help. And more importantly, this is what I like doing. I have a cleaning channel. I like to clean. I like to see if stuff will come clean. And I like the challenge of saying, oh man, this ceiling is covered in actual soot. I wonder what I can do to take that off of there, just to see if I can. It's not entirely altruistic. I'm autistic, and this is my special interest. So I did it for the same reason that people who like jigsaw puzzles do jigsaw puzzles. I mean, it's easy to sit back and go, why are you putting that together if you're just going to crumple it all up after you're done and put it back in a box? Well, it's because I like doing jigsaw puzzles. I'm the same way with houses. I know that sounds weird to even address that concern, but I get it a lot. I get a lot of people who are saying, especially in the really extreme cleans like this one, why even bother? And it's like, well, because I didn't want to make a video of me saying, man, you should have seen this house. It was crazy. It was so crazy that I didn't do it. And me explaining that is just the video for this week. Enjoy my video about not doing things. In fact, I enjoyed not doing things so much, I'm just going to change the name of the channel to Midwest Magic Nothing. Speaking of the ceiling, what I found worked the best on this was I used about a cup of bleach for about 3 or 4 gallons of water. And then I put in about a tablespoon of Dawn dish soap, used warm water, and then I just used a one of those sponges that's got a scratch pad on the back of it. I used the sponge to wet down the ceiling so the bleach could stick to it, and then I used the scour pad in circles to get off the soot, and then I wiped that down with a fresh rag, which, by the way, those rags that I'm using are my microfiber. They're my pink microfibers. That's a 16-inch by 16-inch one. I sell those on my site, MidwestMagicCleaning.com. All the rags and stuff you see me using on every one of these videos, I sell on MidwestMagicCleaning.com. It's one of the ways that I support having employees and how I can afford the dumpsters for these houses. And if I'm using it on video, you know it's good stuff because I won't use cheap half-assed rags on anything that I do. You'll see me cleaning a window here in a little bit that will blow your mind, and I'm using my microfiber to start it, and then I'm using the ultra fine microfiber to dry it, and it's so nuts that it looks like I've cleaned the window off, like completely out of existence. It looks like there's no window left in the framework. Those ultra fine ones are the ones that I sell the most of because they're genuinely like a magic trick. They remove streaks so well. And as long as I'm plugging stuff, I might as well plug the subscribe button. We're on the downhill slope to 1 million subscribers. The last I checked, we were at 844,000 subscribers. So if we continue growing at our current rate, we may hit 1 million subscribers by the end of this summer, maybe. Subscribing is free, and it just lets YouTube know that you like videos like this. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do. Help us hit that 1 million mark so we can get our little gold play button plaque. And that's all I've ever asked in return for doing these free cleanings. To give you an idea of what I mean by free cleanings, I have had people in the past who are like, well, you make money off of YouTube, so it's not free. And it's like, that's not what I mean by free. I mean, I'm not charging the owner of the house $15,000 to do this cleanup. The owner of the house is getting this done for them and not having to pay tens of thousands of dollars to a professional to come in and do it out of their pocket. To give that some perspective, I paid about $1,500 in dumpster fees and safety equipment alone. We went through another $300 worth of chemicals and cleaning equipment itself, from rags to masks to, everything that you see us using here, scrub pads, chemicals, moose repellent. So yes, I do in fact make money off of YouTube. That is correct. I also put a ton of money into these houses. I did a house a couple years ago that I paid $6,000 to clean somebody's house. That video did not make that money back, but I never expected it to. All I knew was YouTube would allow me to make some of that money back, and I was in a position to help them out, so I did it. Anyway, I used the same concoction to clean the cabinets as I did to clean the ceiling because I knew I was dealing with the same soot. I went ahead and tried it on the goo nasty stuff on the inside of the cabinets just to see if it would work because it couldn't hurt. I was already using it for the outside of the cabinets too. And fortunately it did work. If it didn't, I would have gotten something really powerful like a Zep degreaser, or I would have tried my Mr. Clean on it because that's really good at breaking down grease as well. But it would have taken something more powerful, and fortunately all it took was that bleach, Dawn dish soap, and my scouring pad combination, and it just cut right through it. Meanwhile, Kristen was working on the lower cabinets because she's only 5'4", and I'm a full foot taller than her, and I've earned my position in the clouds, and she can mess with that stuff that's down low because damn, I have got 52-year-old knees, son. Now, I didn't work on the bottom cabinets myself, but I know that whatever was on there was so bad that Kristen had to remove it with a paint scraper. Like, chemicals weren't even touching this stuff. I don't know what it was, but I'm going to describe it as what once was food, which now that I think about it is actually a really good name for a metal album. I call it Nobody Take It, It's Mine. Actually, no, I'm going to gift that to Mujin Migs. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, you should. It's hilarious. I'll put the link to his channel in the description too. We'll just make this sucker a link fest. For the countertops, it's just simple Mr. Clean and a microfiber towel to get rid of all the grime. That's just enough to get rid of almost everything. But for the sink, I'm going to use Barkeeper's Friend, which is oxalic acid. When you apply this stuff, you don't want it to set. You want to apply it to a wet sink to make kind of a paste and immediately start scrubbing that in. I use the scratchy part of a scouring pad. It's like a scouring pad on one side and a sponge on the other. And I use small circles all the way around everything, the faucets, the back side of it, the sink itself. And then you want to rinse that stuff off as soon as you're done cleaning it. If it sits too long, it can do like a chemical burn. I mean, it takes a lot to make that chemical burn, but still, you want to get it on there, scrub it down, and then rinse it off right away. And it'll make almost every stainless sink look brand new.
Yes, we do. Yeah, they operate on air pressure like a bicycle pump. Mm. We ever do this in a house with light weather? We definitely never want this to sit. We want to do this and immediately start using it. It's oxalic acid, even though it works great on sinks that are stainless. It will eventually start staining stainless. Comet's kind of the opposite. It's a bleach base, and you can let that sit.
You are not prepared for this window. Another album name, I call it, but for real, you're not prepared because this is a combination of soot and nicotine. And to get this off, I had to use my little scouring pad thingy, and I'm using a homemade concoction that is made with alcohol, water, and a few drops of Dawn dish soap. The actual proportions are 1/3 of a bottle of any strength alcohol, 3/4 of a bottle of water, and then just a squeeze of Dawn dish soap. I'd say it's 5 or 6 drops. That just helps the alcohol stick to the window. So I'll spray it down, let it sit for maybe, 30 seconds, maybe not even that long, just enough to saturate. While it's soaking in, I go to the other side of the window and spray those down too, so it's got time to sit and activate. Then I'm going to use my little scoury patty thingy to get the major grime off. Then I'm going to switch to a microfiber to wipe that off. Then I'm going to follow that up with an ultra fine microfiber to get rid of streaks. And these windows are so bad I had to do that process twice to each side. And whenever I get to that second application, that's the part that's mind-blowing because there are no streaks or anything. And again, I sell those rags on MidwestMagicCleaning.com. After the windows, we're just going to go do all the floors. We had to sweep up the majority of the big stuff so that it doesn't break a vacuum. Even a crappy vacuum, you don't want it to break because we still need to use it. Once we get the main stuff off the floor, then I'll go over it with a vacuum to suck up any of the extra dust, but we're not going to mop these floors because they are toast. If we would have had another day or two, I would have made some sort of attempt to bring back some of these floors, and I would have used Murphy's oil soap, and it would have taken 5 or 6 moppings because these things are just grimy. But for the most part, the floors are toast. They're going to need to be replaced or sanded down and refinished. I don't think anybody's going to do that because the rest of the house is in such bad condition it wouldn't make sense to redo these. But at a bare minimum, we wanted to get all the extra crap off of there so that, you know, when the daughter comes in and does a walkthrough and sees it cleaned up for the first time, at least she's not tracking all that debris everywhere. Like I told her from the very beginning, we're not as much removing dirt from this house as we're removing bad memories for her. She went through a lot. She doesn't deserve to go through it. And the sooner we can get her out of this mess and on with her life, the better. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're new, please hit the subscribe button. I guess I should ask for a thumbs up too. I never ask for those. I don't know what they do. But it couldn't hurt, I guess. All that said, members, I'll see you all this Wednesday for a new members-only video or a live. Everybody else, I'll see you next weekend. Later.